Welcome to the QRadar Advisor Beta 1.3 demo. My name is Cameron and I'm the development team lead on this project. Today I'll be walking you through the capabilities of the QRadar Advisor and how you can use it to enhance your investigative abilities on QRadar offenses. Let's jump right in. So we're going to be taking a look at a demo system today of a QRadar box that has the application installed within it. The installation of the QRadar Advisor is covered fairly thoroughly in our user guide, as well as the FAQ on the App Exchange, so we won't cover that here. We'll just talk about what the QRadar Advisor is capable of and how it can help you in your investigation of offenses within QRadar. So you'll notice here we have the QRadar Advisor installed, and it shows up as an extra tab in our top bar called Watson. Let's click on it and check out what the QRadar Advisor looks like. So clicking over to the Watson tab, I'm presented with a view that shows the open offenses that are in my box and allows me to begin investigation on those offenses by the QRadar Advisor or view offenses that have already been investigated and what their investigation showed. So let me take a look at one of the offenses that I haven't investigated yet, potentially successful exploit containing TCP hit. You see I have two of those offenses here. Let's take a look at the second one, and we're going to go ahead and kick off the investigation about that offense, just to give you an idea of how easy it is to begin investigation on an offense. All I have to do is click on the specific offense that I'm interested in, and in the bottom right hand corner, click the Investigate this incident button. This modal shows me how many analysis attempts that I have left for today. Most customers have 5 as we work on the beta of the system. You see here my developer limit. So I'm going to kick off the analysis of this specific offense because I want to know more about it, and all I have to do is click Analyze. The analysis starts and I'm presented a loading indicator until the analysis is complete. Analyses during beta can take anywhere from a couple of minutes to around 15 minutes, depending on how many observables are part of the offense and how complicated they may be. So let's take a look at an offense that has already been investigated. Potentially successful exploit containing TCP hit. So very much like my other offense, before we get into what this offense has within it, let's take a look at what triggered this offense, what events and rules created this offense within the QRadar system, so we can get an idea of the value that the QRadar Advisor can bring. To do that, all I have to do is go up to the top and click on the incident number, which takes me to the QRadar page that you're used to talking about this incident. Let's take a look. So we're on our offense screen, and we want to take a look at what triggered this offense to happen and kind of get an idea of what a security analyst would go through when they're investigating this specific offense. So the description doesn't give us much, potentially successful exploit containing TCP hit. So let's take a look at what contributed to this offense and how it was triggered. So you see here we have a source IP address that's an internal IP address, one of our assets, and we have a couple destination IPs. You see here there's an internal one. There's also 5 remote IP addresses that we'll get into in a bit. So let's scroll down. So we see here a couple of different log sources that contributed to this offense. Bluecoat, a web proxy, which should give us some network traffic. Symantec endpoint protection, so we should have maybe some viruses or MD5s that were detected here, and our custom rule engine. If we look down, we can see a bunch of actions that contributed to this event. So, for example, a bunch of TCP hits. Let's take a look at one of them and just see if we can see some information about this particular TCP hit. So this TCP hit was to a URL, and it looks like there was an executable that was requested. We can see the logs down here, so there was some executable that was downloaded. We don't know much about this. Normally, I would go in to a resource like the X-Force Exchange and enter this URL and see if I could find out if this URL was malicious or not, so I could start narrowing down whether this particular part of the offense is interesting or not. So let's take a look at another TCP hit just to see what else we have as part of this offense. So this TCP hit was to foxnews.com. So there is traffic in here that we know is not malicious. So foxnews.com isn't malicious. I can double check if I want to, but I'm fairly sure that an asset that's navigating to foxnews.com isn't doing anything malicious. This is probably just the user looking at the news for the day. So I have a couple of TCP TCP hits here, and there could be a lot more, and some of them could involve traffic that I'm interested in looking at, and some of them could not, like Fox News. So we want to be able to narrow down our range of focus so that we know what we should be looking at. There were also a couple viruses detected, the Symantec antivirus marked as malicious. So if we take a look at one of those, we see here that, okay, that gmuweb.exe that we saw before, Symantec did mark this as malicious. So I am interested in looking more at that GMU website to see if there's anything particularly bad about it and whether it's part of maybe other offenses on my box. And you see that's kind of what triggered this exploit. So there was some TCP traffic that was linked to some download, then that download was marked as malicious. And if we take a look at this, we can see what rules contributed to this. So potentially successful exploit, there was an exploit event followed by firewall accepts. And so you can see that that's one of our rules that we have here that was triggered. So there was potentially an exploit, and then there was some extra log traffic to that endpoint again. So maybe there's something malicious going on there. Maybe our computer is now part of a botnet. So we need to know more about this offense so that we can really dig into how bad this is and what we can do about it. So let's hop back over to our Watson tab and take a look at how we can gain insight out of this offense from the QRadar advisor. So on the Watson tab, I'm given our list of offenses again. You see that offense that we kicked off earlier is still under investigation. So I'm going to click on the one we were just talking about. And I had already investigated this offense, so let's take a look at what we uncovered. So this top view is a list of things that we can already get as part of the offense view in QRadar. None of this is interesting as new functionality. All of this is interesting for the offense, but these things are things that you could see earlier in the offense view. So the incident type, categories, when it was created, and a little bit of information about the source, the composition of whether events or flows contributed to this offense, and what the magnitude breakdown was between severity, credibility, and relevance. So the new section you'll notice here is down at the bottom, this Watson Insights. So we give you an English explanation of what contributed to this particular investigation on this offense. You see here, for example, that our analysis of 33 observables that were part of the offense is finished, and we found 994 new indicators that are part of this offense. And about 21 of those are interesting, and a couple of them, 3 of them in particular, are marked as malicious that you should look more into. And so let's take a look at the visual representation of this so we can really kind of get at what's going on here and really understand what this text means. To do that, I just click on this Explore Insights link. So I'm taken to a graphical representation of this offense and what observables contributed to this offense's investigation. So we start off here with our investigation after analysis. Let's take a step back really quick and look at what the offense looked like before we began analysis. Down at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice there's a stage 1 and a stage 2. Stage 1 is our offense before it has been investigated. And so we can take a look at the observables that we could see in those rules just in a graphical format. So you'll see here in the middle that we have one IP address that was the source of this offense, our asset that triggered all of this to happen. And it connected to a bunch of other IP addresses that may be related to our offense, or it may just be noise. So we see our couple URLs here. We see some URLs that don't seem malicious. So we see our Fox News down here, CNN.com, Amazon. Those probably aren't very malicious. IBM, we know that's not malicious. But we do see this URL that we saw before, this gmuweb.exe, that we're a little unsure about. Some ports that are related to it, an IP address that's related to it, and some other IP addresses here we don't know anything about that look internal, as well as our user JSmith. And so instead of going through all of these things and investigating them one by one, we've handed them all off to the QRadar advisor for analysis. And the QRadar advisor has expanded and removed those parts of our offense that are interesting or not interesting, respectively. So we may remove CNN.com, Amazon, and Fox News from our graph because we know those aren't malicious, but we may expand more on this GMU web executable so that you know what else that executable is linked to. And that's in our stage 2 graph. So in our stage 2 graph, we show, for example, that an IP address was linked to Amazon and linked to a bunch of other URLs as well, and that's not really very interesting. But over here, we see that this IP address that it was navigated to is linked to malware. So there was malware found on this address. It's linked to a bunch of other URLs, 111 different URLs. Maybe this is part of a multi-hoster or a URL that's part of a group, and it's linked to a couple other bad things: spam, some malicious IP addresses that are listed as bots, some URLs that were down, or some MD5s that were downloaded. Up here, though, we see this URL that we were interested in before, this gmuweb.exe. And so we know this executable has this MD5 hash from our investigation. We also know the file names that were linked to this executable. There's 9 of them, but the most common is diff.exe.vir. And we know that this executable is a virus. This is listed as Win32. It's a Trojan, and it is a backdoor, and it is listed as malware by our systems. And so we know that it was good that we looked at this, because we know that this URL is linked. This is linked to this malicious file, which was marked as a virus. And so I should look at that more as part of my offense investigation. So this gives us some insight into those observables that were linked as part of this offense. However, one of the things that we do give you, as I mentioned before, we do try to remove information from the graph that's not interesting and add information to the graph that is interesting. So you notice that what I said before was there were 998 new offenses that were new observables that were linked to this offense. Where are they here? So we only show you what we deem to be important. However, we do give you the ability to view those observables which we didn't think were important, just so you can check our work, or if you want to do other investigation on your own. The way that you trigger that view on the left side is the Key Insights Only toggle. You'll notice that it's toggled on here. If I toggle it off, we're taken to this view where we can see all of the observables that were linked to this offense as part of our investigation. And you'll note that this graph is pretty insane. We see some clusters around what we would normally see be clustered, so some IP addresses that are linked to some URLs, maybe IP addresses that are linked to certain categories like sports or blogs. And way over on the right here, we see our source IP address as well as what's connected to it. And there's some malicious nodes in here, but this is just too much to handle. And this is the problem that we're trying to solve with the QRadar Advisor, where people just cannot look through all the information that may be connected to an offense and really get insight out of it. So while we allow you to view this graph, this extended graph, we really want to give you only those things which are important, only those things which are actually malicious or should actually be linked to this offense that you should take a better look at. And that's why we default to the Key Insights view, so that there's a graph that you can look at that doesn't have as many observables in it, so you can focus on what we determine to be the most important observables as part of this offense. So that was a brief look at the QRadar Advisor and its capabilities. The QRadar Advisor is a useful tool to help in your investigation of offenses in QRadar. We look to consistently improve the tool, and we look forward to any of your feedback regarding what you would like to see as part of the QRadar Advisor.